I had heard all the stories about Mammoth Cave, the endless passages, ancient mysteries, and strange echoes that seemed to have a life of their own. But those were just stories, right? As I stood at the cave's yawning entrance, a shiver crept down my spine. The guide had warned us to stick close and not wander off, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something in that darkness was calling my name, just waiting for me to take a step too far. The tour began easily enough. The paths were well lit, and the guide's voice echoed against the stone. But the deeper we went, the more the walls seemed to press in, swallowing up our voices. I hung back slightly, letting the others move ahead. Something, a flicker in the corner of my eye, a whisper at the edge of my hearing, drew me off the path, deeper into the shadows. It didn't take long for the sounds of the group to fade. I stopped and listened, expecting to hear their laughter or footsteps nearby, but only silence greeted me. A strange silence that felt thick, almost alive. I called out, but my voice didn't carry. It was as if the walls absorbed every sound, leaving nothing but an unsettling, oppressive quiet around me. Suddenly, a faint echo of my own voice came back to me, distorted and delayed. It sounded almost wrong, as if someone else was mimicking me from deep within the cave. I laughed nervously, trying to convince myself it was just my mind playing tricks. But the feeling that something unseen was watching me grew stronger with every step. I took out my phone, the screen's glow barely illuminating the space around me. The walls were closer here, jagged and rough, and the air felt heavy, thick with an earthy dampness. Just as I was about to turn back, I noticed faint scratches along the wall. They looked like claw marks, desperate and frenzied, as if someone had tried to claw their way out. The eerie silence was suddenly broken by a distant sound, a soft, dragging noise that echoed down the passage. It was getting closer. My heart raced, but I couldn't move, frozen by the sense that something was approaching, slowly and deliberately. The dragging sound grew louder, joined by the faintest whisper. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was unmistakably pleading, desperate. I took a step back, nearly tripping over a loose rock, my eyes scanning the darkness. But there was nothing there, just shadows shifting with my phone's weak light. I turned to retrace my steps, but every turn seemed to lead me further from the way I had come. It was as if the cave itself had changed, closing me in. My breathing grew shallow, the realization dawning that I was lost, trapped in a place that felt like it had been waiting for me. I forced myself to stay calm, but then, out of the silence, I heard a soft sob. It was close, too close, yet I couldn't see anyone. I called out, asking if someone was there, my voice trembling, but the only response was an echo, not of my voice, but of someone crying, softly and painfully. Panic surged as I backed away, the walls closing in tighter. Shadows began to move, shifting around me as if they were alive, watching, waiting. The last thing I saw before the light flickered out was a handprint on the wall, fresh and damp, pressed into the rock beside me. I stumbled through the darkness, my hands scrambling along the walls, desperate to find my way out. The whispers grew louder, closer, and in a panic, I felt myself slipping, falling into the inky black. When I finally tumbled out of the darkness and into the faint light of the entrance, gasping for air, I looked back, half expecting to see someone, standing there, watching. When I rejoined the tour, the guide shot me a strange look. "You're lucky," he said with a grave expression. "Many who wander off in there, they don't come back, at least not as they were." Everyone told me I was crazy to go exploring Mammoth Cave alone, especially with just a lantern. But I wanted an authentic experience, to feel what early explorers must have felt, relying only on the dim glow and the sound of my own footsteps. As I stepped into the mouth of the cave, a chill wrapped around me, but I pushed forward, lantern in hand, my heartbeat steady, until I heard that faint, rhythmic tapping echoing from somewhere deep inside. It started off innocent, the kind of sounds caves make when water drips off stalactites or when distant rocks shift. But this sound was different, deliberate, as if someone or something was calling me deeper into the dark. Ignoring a sinking feeling in my stomach, I pressed on, lantern swinging, its light barely piercing the endless shadows stretching out before me. The silence was thick, and soon I found myself captivated by the echo of my own footsteps. But then, another set joined mine, faint yet steady, mirroring my every step. I paused, heart racing, as the footsteps stopped too. I told myself it was an echo, nothing more. But each time I moved, it followed, just one beat behind. Gripping the lantern tightly, I moved faster, the shadows around me seeming to flicker and twist. But that sound, those echoing steps, remained just as relentless. My hands began to tremble as I raised the lantern to look around. The light danced on the jagged walls, revealing claw-like marks scratched into the stone. I tried to ignore the marks, but there was something in them, a pattern almost, like someone had been trying to leave a message. I leaned closer, squinting. Suddenly, the light in my lantern flickered, and I could swear I saw a faint figure at the edge of the darkness, just beyond the reach of the flame. My heart pounded as I stumbled backward, but the figure remained, unmoving, shrouded in shadow. A raspy whisper filled the air, low and urgent. I strained to listen, but all I could make out was a single word. Run! My instincts screamed at me to heed the warning, but my feet remained rooted. As I stood there, frozen, the light dimmed again. The air felt colder, the shadows more intense, as if they were closing in on me. I spun around, convinced I was just scaring myself, but now I was lost. Every turn I made seemed to twist the path further, like the cave itself was alive. The tapping returned, louder, closer, a mocking beat to my panicked breaths. It was no echo. Someone, or something, was following me. I forced myself to calm down, but a faint glow appeared up ahead. Relief washed over me as I stumbled toward it, thinking I had found my way back. But as I neared, I realized it wasn't the exit. It was another lantern, flickering on the ground, and around it were footprints in the dirt, footprints that led nowhere. Trembling, I picked up the old lantern. Its light was weak, barely illuminating the shadows. Yet it felt warm in my hands, strangely familiar. A faint whisper drifted from the lantern, almost like a voice trapped inside. "Don't look back," it murmured, a chill crawling down my spine. I knew I shouldn't, but I couldn't resist. Slowly, I turned, and in the darkness, just beyond the light's reach, stood a figure watching me, eyes gleaming. I dropped the lantern and ran, the weight of unseen eyes heavy on my back. As I sprinted through the twisting corridors, a scream erupted from the depths, echoing after me, chilling and hollow. I didn't dare look back, only pushing forward until, at last, I burst out into the daylight. Breathless, I glanced down to see that old lantern in my hand, cold and dark, its faint whispering warning still lingering in my ears. Even now, I swear I see flickers of light in the dark corners of my room, shadows shifting as if something, or someone, followed me out. When I signed up for a special night tour of Mammoth Cave, I didn't expect to be the only one who showed up. The guide seemed annoyed, but he agreed to take me down a rarely explored section. It was thrilling at first, just me, a flashlight, and miles of silent stone. But the deeper we ventured, the heavier the silence became, pressing in like it was hiding something. The guide suddenly stopped, shining his light down a narrow, jagged tunnel. "This is as far as I go," he muttered, turning back. I was left alone, staring into the passageway. Curiosity pulled me in, and I figured I'd walk just a few steps and then turn back. My flashlight cast eerie shadows that danced along the walls, forming shapes that seemed to watch me. I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness in this part of the cave was different, almost alive. As I pressed forward, a quiet whisper seemed to rise from somewhere deep within, urging me to go further. The whispers grew louder, like faint murmurs floating through the thick air. It almost sounded like a voice calling my name, but I brushed it off as my imagination. I glanced behind me, but the passage I came through seemed to have vanished, replaced by endless shadows. The darkness closed in tighter, swallowing my steps. My flashlight flickered, and I felt a rush of panic. I slapped it, hoping it would stay on, but the beam only grew weaker, casting longer, twisted shadows. Suddenly, a cold breeze brushed past me, carrying with it a faint scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic like rusted iron. I pressed on, hoping to find a familiar path, but then I saw something on the ground, a shoe caked in mud and dust, lying as if it had been abandoned. The sight stopped me cold. I reached down to examine it, but a soft shuffle in the darkness made me jerk back. My flashlight caught the glint of two faint eyes watching me. The eyes vanished as quickly as they'd appeared, leaving me questioning if I'd really seen them at all. But a prickling sensation told me I was no longer alone. I moved faster, my footsteps echoing louder, almost as if something were following in perfect rhythm, just a few steps behind me. I tried to stay calm, but then I heard a soft scratching sound along the walls like nails scraping stone. It was close, much too close. My flashlight flickered again, and for a split second I saw a figure, tall and gaunt with hollow eyes, lurking in the shadows, watching me. My breath caught as I realized the figure wasn't moving. It was just standing there, staring with those empty eyes, waiting for something. I turned, desperate to escape, but every corridor twisted, leading me deeper instead of out. The air grew colder, sharper, each breath feeling harder to take. Just when I thought I couldn't go further, I heard a soft, chilling laughter echo through the cave. It sounded close, almost like it was right behind me. I broke into a run, barely able to see, but then I tripped, sprawling across the cold stone. My flashlight rolled, casting its beam onto a message scratched into the rock. "You're not alone." I scrambled to my feet, only to hear that laughter again, louder this time, echoing off the walls, as if it was coming from every direction at once. With trembling hands, I picked up my flashlight, the beam now faint and barely lighting my way. Shadows shifted, revealing glimpses of faces, twisted and grimacing in the stone around me. In a panic, I ran blindly, no longer caring where I ended up. I could hear whispers all around me, voices blending into a chilling chorus. When I finally stumbled out into the open air, gasping, I realized I was gripping a piece of stone in my hand, a small chunk with the same message scratched into it. "You're not alone." I never looked back, but even now I can still hear the faint echo of laughter, a reminder that some part of that cave still holds on to me, waiting, whispering in the shadows.